Hi, everyone. It's Natalie, and I feel like our kids are surrounded by unhealthy things, and getting them to eat fruits and vegetables, it can be next to impossible. I've gotten to a point where I started requiring it, but that often backfires because they really don't want it. So I sneak it into things like soups and smoothies. Well, kids are smart and they're totally on to me. So how do we change the eating habits of our kids? Unfortunately, the American diet is often just bad, and it's leading to problems with our kids' learning and overall health. And you know what? That applies to us adults as well. So we're going to talk about all of that on the podcast today with Dr. Natasha Beck. She is the founder of Dr. Organic Mommy, an online resource focused on pregnancy, parenting, nutrition, and non-toxic living. She holds a doctorate in clinical psychology, and she specializes in child and family health. Before we get started, I want to ask you a favor. If you haven't yet subscribed or written a review of this podcast, it would mean so much to me. I would be honored to have you do so. And thank you for helping me spread the word on what we're doing to help get healthy with our relationships and with our physical health as well. On to the podcast now with Dr. Natasha Beck. Natasha is joining me now, and this conversation is one that is so close to me, and I know a lot of parents. First, keeping our kids healthy, Natasha, but it feels like we live in a world that makes that difficult, especially here in the US.
That's definitely so true. It is really tough, especially because we don't value health as much. I mean, we're definitely going in that direction, which is great because there's more options and there's more awareness, but it definitely is tough on parents.
So I have, and I'll use this as an example, my oldest daughter started realizing, and I want to talk about a couple of things here. Let me back up. Toxicity, things that are toxic in what we eat. Also, I want to talk about sugar and sleep, because these are all really important in my family. And I know for other parents, they worry about these things. But one of the things that we look at when I was talking about my daughter is food colorings. It seems to be in everything that we eat. I mean, our food is really pretty, right? It's way too colorful in boxes and cans. But let's go into that, because my daughter gets headaches when there's red number 40 in things that she eats. Give me some other examples of that and why it's important for us to pay attention to this.
So you're talking about artificial food dyes, and there's been a lot of controversy about that. They're banned. A lot of them are banned in other places like in Europe, but in the States, we still have several that we still use consistently, unfortunately. Speaking of which, red dye 40 that your daughter is so sensitive to, that's banned in Europe, but it's not banned here, unfortunately. And even in the 60s, we started seeing that there was impacts on children who had attentional difficulties. And that research has been ongoing, looking at how artificial food dyes, as well as refined sugar and preservatives, are all impacting children's behavior, from sleep to attention to cognition, and causing long-term impacts with like fatty liver disease with sugar now that we've never seen in young children. And so it's really a huge public health problem.
What is fatty liver disease?
So our liver actually our liver is our detox organ, right? And so when we are consuming so much refined sugar and we're just constantly getting insulin spikes, our liver turns into fat, basically, and we can't regulate the amount of sugar that we're taking in. And so these kids are all developing diabetes.
Well, that's scary to think about from a child's perspective, but then those children grow into young adults and older adults where that will impact them greatly.
Very much so. So we just have to be more conscientious about it. And obviously this can seem overwhelming, especially for a parent. Well, how do I deal with this? Like, sugar is so prevalent, artificial dyes are so prevalent. How do I manage all of this?
Well, let's go right into that, because I feel like, my older daughters are a little bit more aware, probably because I talk about it and it started to sink in. But when we look at our younger children, creating those habits and living in a world where cupcakes are in the classroom every day and candy at Halloween, like you don't want to make your kids feel like they're being punished because they don't get what other kids have that has that immediate gratification. But how do we deal with that as parents?
It's definitely tough, especially, when they become school age and you don't have as much control. But with younger children, it's really about controlling what you can at home. My view is always 80-20. So you can't control everything. You just got to learn to let go, because if you restrict too much with kids, when they inevitably are let loose, they will go completely bonkers. And so you've got to educate and you've got to model for them. And so with young children, it's really about showing them, the importance of connecting what they eat with how they feel. So they become self-aware, like your oldest daughter, who's realizing, oh, when I eat this red dye 40, I get headaches. So with children, you want to make that same connection for them and help them see like, oh, it's not normal to actually feel bloated. It's not normal to feel like it's painful to go to the bathroom. It's not normal to feel like slow and sluggish, or to feel so hyper that I'm running around all the time, or that I feel like I can't sleep. These are things that are not normal to feel. And so we want to make that connection for kids to see that. And then we want to educate our children about food, where food comes from. I always tell our kids and all our families that I work with, always read your labels and do it with your kids. Let's look things up together. What is this ingredient? And when there's like hundreds of ingredients on something, I don't want to eat fake food. I want to stick with the real food. When you're going to the grocery store, I always tell you, stick with the outer aisles, go to the farmers markets, stick with what's in season, buy frozen if you have to. Frozen is great, a great option, especially one that's cheaper to get things they flash freeze it at the peak of the season. And so that way the nutrition is held in. So that's another great option.
Yeah. Frozen, I think sometimes gets overlooked because you're right. Yeah. They can freeze it right away. Can we talk about for a moment, and I'm not sure if you hear my dogs barking, the benefit of working at home. It's great. Yes. There must be somebody outside. Apologize for that. So let's talk about organic for a moment. It's more expensive, can be harder for people sometimes to pay for. How important is it? And do you think, in your professional opinion, that it should be everything, or what's most important for us to buy organic?
Yeah. So everybody's at a different point in their journey. So it's really hard, I think, for parents not to compare themselves to other people. So if you're at a point where you don't buy anything organic, let's start with something from the Environmental Working Group, which is a great nonprofit organization that they published the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So the Dirty Dozen, meaning like these are the top 12 foods that hold pesticides the most. Pesticides meaning what they spray on crops to avoid getting, bugs eating them, or for them breaking down or having weeds. And so we want to avoid those because they are harmful to our bodies. So looking at that Dirty Dozen list, like kale's on there, strawberries are on there, things that have a thin skin, but like looking at the Clean 15, you've got, things that are citrus, like an orange or a lemon or a banana. Those have thicker skin, so the pesticides don't actually get through to the fruit or vegetable as much. So I always say, when you can, try to buy organic with at least the Dirty Dozen. But I think people are confused about what organic actually means. So when you find a package that says organic, what does that actually mean? It does mean there's no artificial food dyes in there. It means that there's no high fructose corn syrup. It means there's no GMOs. It means there's no glyphosate sprayed on it. And so that, at least, having that USDA organic symbol is something to cue you that, hey, this doesn't have everything. It doesn't always mean it's healthy for you, but at least that option is there for you to say, all right, there's two different kinds of pasta sauces, one right next to the other, or two different kinds of maple syrups, one that's organic and one that's not. Typically, they're right next to each other in the store, and it's not always more expensive. And so you just want to be mindful of that when you're doing your grocery shopping.
Let's go into a few of the things when you're looking at an ingredient list. Like the first thing I do is I look to see if there are a lot of ingredients, because if it's a big, long list, I usually start questioning. And when I don't know what half of the ingredients are, that's when I question it. But what are some of the top offenders? If you pull out the box at the grocery store and you're looking at it, we know, of course, artificial coloring, but what are some of the others that we should be watching?
So the first thing I always advise people to do is to look right directly for the added sugar. That's now regulated. And so all companies actually have to do that. And so when I look at the added sugar, I don't want the added sugar is the most important, because it's very complicated when you look at the ingredients. They can list cane sugar. They can list brown rice syrup. Those are all different sugars. So you think, oh, there's only one sugar in there, it's okay. But they don't have to combine them, and so there's several, sometimes 10 different types of sugar it's in one product. And so that's why I go first for the added sugar. How much is there? And you want to be mindful of that, because for children under the age of 2, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no sugar. And then all of a sudden it jumps from age 2 to 17, 24 grams of sugar, which is a huge range because a 2-year-old does not weigh the same as a 17-year-old. And so you want to be mindful of that. Like, I'm not going to give my kid 24 grams of added sugar each day. And it actually adds up really quickly, unfortunately. You've got a glass of orange juice, you've got a muffin, you've got your sweetened yogurt and a piece of toast. You're basically got your added sugar for the day all in one meal right there with 24 grams of added sugar. And that's a lot.
Yeah, that goes very quickly, especially at school. If they have, somebody's birthday and they have cookies or whatever that might be, you've pretty much used your day of added sugar right there. Yeah,
exactly. And there's impacts to that on your child's health. So,
okay. So what would those types of impacts be? We talk about the hyper or the ADHD that we're starting to see more of in kids, but what other impacts do you see?
I mean, I see it impacts sleep. I mean, if you're so wound up and you've got like huge spikes in insulin and your body's not able to regulate, it's really hard to calm your body down to actually relax to go to sleep. If you are, not getting enough fiber, which most people in America, unfortunately, don't. And when you're getting all this added sugar, there's no fiber there, especially with like a glass of orange juice. That's a huge amount of sugar, but there's no fiber, unfortunately, or apple juice. You're going to have bowel movement issues. You're going to feel constipated, and no kid is going to feel happy if they are feeling strained, if they feel uncomfortable with their digestion. And so then that comes out in their behavior because they don't know how to put 2 and 2 together to express that.
So with your kids, and tell us how old they are and give us an example of what a day looks like or a weekend or something. Just, I like to give people real world examples of what it can look like. And I also know that it's hard to just turn the page and all of a sudden one day wake up and say, okay, kids, we're changing everything. So maybe some advice for starting to make those changes and getting healthier.
Great question. So I have a 7-year-old boy, a 5-year-old girl, and an almost 3-year-old girl, and then another girl on the way. So a typical day, I like to make a veggie loaded oatmeal in the morning. I always say, why do we not put vegetables in our every meal? I think people tend to avoid it because, there's mystery behind it and, it might be bitter or might taste funny. But if you're buying things in season, vegetables are great. And I don't want my kids to be fearful of it. So it's really important to introduce it all the time and to not make a big deal over it. So if my child says to me, I don't want to eat this. It seems like you don't want that right now. So you're going to validate what they're saying to you and acknowledge it. Validate seems like you feel a little bit frustrated because I don't want that tension with my child because I don't want to dictate to them, you have to eat this. Eat one more bite. I never use that in my vocabulary. That's not there. Me, as the parent or the caregiver, you want to decide what and when your child eats, and your child decides if and how much. So that way the battle at least is removed from the table. But I do let my kids know that our taste buds are always changing. And I examine our tongues. We get out the magnifying glasses. And some days you'll like something, and some days you actually won't. And those things change. And so it's always important to try the food. And if you don't like it, there's no pressure. And so I think removing that pressure is really helpful for kids. Now, as far as like my breakfast goes, my veggie loaded oatmeal, I'll cook up some like steel cut oats. I'll either grate some zucchini or carrots in, and it doesn't have any taste. The carrots have a nice sweetness, and then you're getting some fiber from that as well. The zucchini is very bland, and you don't even actually see it. But if the kids do see little speckles, I call it like nature's sprinkles. This morning I added pumpkin puree instead. And so it was like a pumpkin flavored oatmeal. And then you got tons of fiber, tons of vitamins in there. And the kids loved it. I add a little bit of cinnamon, and then you can go with the toppings. You can do chia seeds, you can do hemp seeds, you can do raisins, add a little drizzle of maple syrup for your older kids, which is an unrefined sugar. And so you can make it more fun. And then like the other thing I like to do for breakfast, buckwheat pancakes. Get some buckwheat flour, egg, We do plant-based milks because my daughters are allergic to dairy, and dairy can also be inflammatory. So you just want to be mindful of that. Little blackstrap molasses for some extra iron, and you serve it up, and you can serve it with jam, serve it any way you want. And I make the batter the night before, so I'm not rushing in the morning, and it sits great in the fridge. I have those recipes on my website, and that's an easy thing to make. And then I can also throw it in my kids' lunch.
That sounds delicious. I would eat that for any meal. I try to do some weekend bigger meals and then freeze them and just warm them up. Yeah. Easy to do with some of that as well, especially with pancakes.
For sure can do that with the pancakes. You can just pop them in the toaster oven. You can do overnight oats where you just literally don't touch them, don't cook them, and you just put the oats in dry with your milk, all your toppings. And then the next morning you can heat it up if they like it hot or keep it cold. And so those are also great ideas. I like to do chia seed pudding. I'll mix some yogurt with some plant-based milk, coconut yogurt, plant-based milk, and chia seeds, maybe a little bit of maple syrup. And then I'll add some passion fruit on top or whatever fruits in season. And that's a fun breakfast as well. Or even, for lunch.
So let's talk about transitioning. So if there are people out here listening and they're thinking, oh my, I'm doing boxed this and colored that, but I really want to do better for myself and for my kids, what would you suggest making these changes and how to start?
Great question. So I start with one meal a week. And I usually try to tell parents to start on the weekend because there's less pressure about having to get out the door, feeling, nervous that your child's not eating enough before they go to school. So that pressure is gone. So at least, or dissipated, what should I say? So on the weekend is when I would try to try these things out, try pancakes out, see how your kids, like it. And if it goes well, then you can incorporate it into your weekly menu during the week for school. And then you can repurpose that and, make little pancake sandwiches with like a little bit of almond butter or sunflower butter and jam. And there's your, you've got your lunch ready to go and you don't have to think about lunch. I think the lunch boxes are always a difficult thing to come up with new things and whatnot. So I actually wrote out a whole lunchbox menu and like what you put in the lunchbox and how to make it a complete meal for your kids and giving all the different examples.
So once a week, try something new, just kind of pop some new things in there. What about language so my 12-year-old is picky. I'm not going to hide from it. Like he's so picky and he's very skeptical of what I try to put in. What'd you put in here, Mom? And maybe it's because I am always trying to do these things. I'm trying, or he'll see organic on a box and say, oh, I don't think I'm going to like that. And I don't know why kids, especially today, have this notion of if it's healthy, it's probably not going to taste very good. Can you help me with that or other families who might be going through that?
So first I want to speak about the language piece because that's so important, especially when, with psychology. I want to remove the word picky from everybody's vocabulary. Kids are on a spectrum of cautious or adventurous and then everywhere in between. And typically kids are more cautious. You tend to see that in other facets of their personality. They might be more cautious when they enter a new setting. They might be more cautious to try a new sport or a new activity. So, all kids are different. And I have a child that tends to be more cautious. And so the approach is going to be different. So when you think about it and you say like, oh, my kid's going to be picky. Oh, they're not going to eat that. Even when they're a little one, they internalize that and they're going to feel that because you're projecting that thought onto them. And so they will actually take that in and think, no, I'm not going to like it. My mom doesn't even think I'm going to like it. I'm not going to like it. And even your 1-year-old who's not actually speaking as much, they hear it. They understand it because that receptive language comes on before expressive language. And as far as figuring out, well, how do I get my child to think that organic doesn't necessarily mean healthy and not taste good? I want to prepare meals that taste good, like using things in season. But you have to kind of backtrack. If your child's on a diet that consists more of sugar, they're going to have to detox. And there's actually a great book. I actually have it here called Sugar Proof that was written by Dr. Michael Garan and Dr. Emily Ventura. And they've got 2 programs in there that actually walk you through, of how to detox your family from sugar, because it does take time. Sugar is a drug and you're used to it. And once you're off of sugar, you actually no longer crave it. And I know this from personal experience because I was addicted to sugar as a child and ate it consistently. And I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, now known as reading disorder. And it really had an impact on me. And I now see the benefit of changing my diet on how I'm able to focus and pay attention. I mean, it's still there, but it's a lot less for sure.
Wow, that is such a big statement. And for so many families that are struggling with ADHD, reading disorder, dyslexia, whatever it might be, they're maybe not identifying their food with the problem.
When you go to your doctors, unfortunately, not many doctors today, but more and more are seeing the impact of diet on behavior, especially when it comes to neurodevelopmental disabilities, because it does. I even see it from my personal experience, but that was what I noticed. And I took that in when I was working at clinics and when I was in graduate school, and I saw it when my patients would come in, having like a McDonald's egg McMuffin and like loaded up with sugar, and they couldn't even sit for 5 minutes. And this is like a 10-year-old who should be able to sit for 5 minutes while I asked them questions, And so I saw that struggle. And so I started to incorporate that into my recommendations, into my reports for these families, because diet is so incredibly important. But I think it's really important to talk to your kids about it, because if you're not on board, your kids aren't going to be on board. So it's really got to be a family decision where everybody sits down, has a family meeting. Let's clean out the pantry. Let's go shopping together. Let's see what are better alternatives. Let's educate ourselves. Well, yeah, maybe the sugar, it does taste good, but why? All right, let's look at high fructose corn syrup. This isn't even real food. I want to actually enjoy a strawberry. And when you take your kids, if you can, to the local farmer's market or to go apple picking, like when you pick something fresh, it tastes incredible. It's just night and day from sitting on a grocery store shelf, that's been sitting there for months, like apples that are, stored. So I always tell parents, try not to buy things that are out of season. So right now, pears, apples, pomegranates, persimmons, those things are in season, but berries aren't in season. So they're not going to taste as good because it's taken a long time to get them from wherever country we're shipping them from. And they lose that intense kind of flavor.
Yeah. Unless they're frozen, but then talking about that, understanding that the shift that I have to make, and I know I need to do it and I still struggle with it, is my kids feeling like I'm sneaking it in. What'd you put in that smoothie, Mom? But actually letting them be a part of it and enjoying it and knowing they're doing good for themselves versus Mom always trying to sneak something in to make them healthy.
Yeah, you always want to involve your children. And that's actually one of my tips to kind of get your kids to appreciate the art of food, is to involve them in the cooking process. I never try to hide anything. So like when I'm putting in veggies into the oatmeal, I show my kids, I let them grate it themselves. I let them scoop it out, and it's a lot easier with the younger kids for sure. With my older kids, like my oldest one, he was making breakfast this morning for himself. And I said, oh, well, how do we spice up your eggs? What can you add? And so he grabbed some microgreens from the fridge, and if your kid is more averse to greens, let's find a way to make it more interesting. So I always start with like a little baby gem lettuce, and it's kind of like more crispy, and have them dip it into dressing. So it's more like a chip, and that makes it more fun and interesting. If your kid's averse to the green salad, grate up some carrots, drizzle on some honey, and put some raisins on top. And that's a delicious, crunchy salad that's, tastes better. And so that's another way you can kind of go with your kids.
Well, I challenge people to take your advice and do something right away. Do something today, once a week, like start incorporating these things. You will be so glad that you did.
Yeah. And when you're cooking with your kids, have your kids taste the smoothie as they go. What do you think? Does it need more of this? Does it need more of that? Adding frozen mango or frozen banana as your base is something I always do, because then it has that creamy, nice texture, like more like a milkshake. And then adding another type of fruit, whether it's blueberries or pineapple, and then adding your greens to it. And it's more tropical, and you actually don't even taste the greens.
No.
But I challenge you to get your child to try it with you and go along and say, well, let's do it together.
And let's see if we like it together. I might not, but I'm pretty sure we probably will.
It's just all about experimenting.
It is, which is part of the fun too. Let it be a science experiment and taste experiment and go into it together. Oh, you've given me some great ideas. I know I need to do it right away. And I'm excited to start trying some of these things. So I have a couple of things. I can't believe how fast our time has gone, but I have a couple of things I like to ask all of my guests who are professionals in different ways, because I learn from them. And the first one is, as a busy mom of 3, who has a busy business as well, I know, and pregnant. What is your favorite tool for productivity?
I think that's such a great question. I feel like I could list out my top 5. Patience for sure, but you can't get patience without self-care for mom. And then my other language tool, because I think language is so important with kids, is instead of threatening with an if, empower them with a when. When you do this, then you may do that.
I love that. That's so good as a parent.
I find when I use that, kids take it in more and I'm not actually losing time because you're not battling them out because you're not threatening them.
Yeah, I just did another podcast on consequences, and the if feels like a consequence. Yeah. And instead it's when. So just use that word when anytime you're reacting and you get better results. So that great tool for productivity as a parent. And then the second question, and I know you have such a history that is so rich in health, but when did you know, or what is your passion and your purpose? And when did you know that?
When I was a kid, I always knew I wanted to work with kids. So pediatrics was always a field that I wanted to enter into. And once I was diagnosed myself with a learning disability and ADHD, I was afforded a lot of opportunities. So I really wanted to go into that field to help others who didn't have those opportunities and to be someone who was actually more thorough in their testing and reporting. And when I was working in clinics, that's when I noticed the impact of diet. And then when I had my first child, that was when I noticed the importance of toxins because my oldest was hospitalized when he was 7 weeks old for 29 days. And so I really took a deep dive into environmental toxins.
And your business has kind of morphed from working in clinics through the years to your own business now. And I've done the same thing. So I appreciate that as a mom. Is that because of motherhood and where you are in your life, or how have you been able to help people as a mompreneur, as I might say?
So I think it's both. It's definitely because of motherhood, but it was also because I found that I was able to reach more people and provide a resource that was free, that wasn't biased, that people didn't have. It wasn't available. And so when I was struggling to find all that information, I wanted a free place to go where I could say, oh, all right, this is where I can see, well, is this packaged food great for me? Is this cleaning product all right for me? And I've kind of kept going with it. And so I've developed, a whole Instagram page that took off, and I, made a website with it. And I've even joined the board of the environmental working group because I love what they do. And I want to help spread awareness and help teach everyone.
Well, you do a great job of that. And that's how I found you, through your Instagram page. So good chance for you to now share that with other people so they can continue to learn. Where can people find you?
Sure. It's at Dr. Organic Mommy. The doctor is abbreviated DR Organic Mommy, or my website, drorganicmommy.com.
Great. Well, I encourage people to go there. You will learn so much. Open your eyes to the toxins, better ways to raise healthy kids, and just appreciate you and all that you do. It's great to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Well, we'll talk again soon. Take care and best of luck with that 4th baby.
Thank you.